You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. In the grand arena of ancient geopolitics, Carthage and Egypt, two of the most powerful non-Indo-European civilizations of the pre-Roman Mediterranean, existed at opposite ends of North Africa. While rarely at war, these two titans were far from isolated. Their relationship was built on commercial ambition, maritime coordination, and mutual recognition of strategic power. Though often overshadowed by Carthage's conflicts with Rome and Egypt's dramas with Persia, Macedonia, and later Rome itself, the interaction between Carthage and Egypt reveals a deep layer of ancient diplomacy, cultural exchange, and realpolitik that shaped the Mediterranean world long before Caesar or Hannibal. The origins of their contact go back to their shared maritime ancestry. Carthage, born from Tyrian Phoenician settlers in the 9th century BC, inherited the Levant's long-standing trade ties with the Egyptian New Kingdom. The Phoenicians had long trafficked in cedar, glass, purple dye, and slaves with Egyptian dynasties. As Carthage grew from a colonial outpost to an economic superpower, it picked up those same trade routes and added new ones. Egyptian products such as linen, papyrus, gold, perfume, and grain found new markets in the Western Mediterranean through Punic merchants, while Carthaginian goods, especially metals, dyes, and Iberian resources, traveled east into the Nile Delta. The earliest concrete records of formal Carthaginian-Egyptian diplomacy are scarce, not because contact was limited, but because both civilizations' written traditions either didn't survive or were actively suppressed by later powers, especially the Romans. Yet archaeological evidence from Egyptian coastal sites, including inscriptions referencing Punic merchants and shipwreck goods bearing Punic markings, suggests a commercial alliance of long duration. By the 6th and 5th centuries BC, Carthage had established itself as the primary naval power in the Western Mediterranean, while Egypt, then under the Sayyid dynasty, was reasserting its maritime independence following centuries of internal turmoil and Assyrian incursions. Both powers had vested interest in maintaining the safety of sea lanes stretching from the Pillars of Hercules to the Levant. During this era, their relations seem to have been defined by mutual benefit and carefully maintained spheres of influence. The two powers avoided military clashes, instead choosing a pragmatic diplomacy. This tacit agreement allowed Egypt to dominate eastern Mediterranean waters and influence affairs in Syria and Palestine, while Carthage focused on Iberia, Sicily, Sardinia, and the Western Seas. Egypt had little interest in Spain. Carthage had no ambitions in the Nile. In fact, this peaceful separation allowed both to thrive economically. Evidence suggests that during the Persian conquest of Egypt in 525 BC, some Egyptian elites sought asylum or trade assistance from Carthaginian partners. Though Carthage likely avoided direct interference to preserve neutrality, its merchants remained a lifeline for Egyptian goods reaching the Western world. Later, during the Ptolemaic period after Alexander's conquest, contact between the two civilizations shifted. Egypt, now under Macedonian Greek rule, became both a cultural rival and a political wildcard. The Ptolemies were less inclined toward Punic diplomacy and more interested in projecting their own power across the Mediterranean. Yet even during this Hellenistic phase, Carthaginian ships were welcomed in Egyptian ports, and Ptolemaic grain continued to flow westward in times of Punic famine. One of the most important undercurrents of this relationship was their shared interest in curbing Greek maritime dominance. Both Egypt and Carthage saw the rising influence of Greek city-states, especially Rhodes and Athens, as potential threats to their trade hegemony. While there's no evidence of a formal military alliance, both powers engaged in indirect coordination, supporting anti-Greek interests when convenient. Carthage's conflicts with Syracuse, a powerful Greek colony in Sicily, sometimes aligned with Egyptian interests, though these links remained unofficial. Cultural exchange, while more limited than with Greece or Rome, did occur. Egyptian religious motifs, particularly Isis and Osiris, eventually found their way into Carthaginian cults, just as Tanit and Baal-Hamon gained recognition in some Eastern Mediterranean religious syncretisms. Carthaginian elites, known for their pragmatism, occasionally adopted Egyptian-style amulets and burial iconography, especially in wealthier coastal cities like Hadrumetum and Leptis Magna. One intriguing aspect of Carthage-Egypt diplomacy involved shared diplomatic language. Both used Phoenician and later Greek as lingua francas in formal exchanges. Greek, in particular, became the bridge language during the Ptolemaic era. Envoys, merchants, and philosophers traveling between Alexandria and Carthage would have spoken it fluently, allowing for smoother relations despite cultural divides. However, their cooperation was never eternal. As Rome rose, both Carthage and Egypt became entangled in Roman strategy. Carthage as the great obstacle in the west, and Egypt as a prize to be courted in the east. Egypt remained neutral or hostile to Carthage during the Punic Wars, choosing to align with Rome to preserve its own independence. The Ptolemies even sent grain to Rome during the Second Punic War, subtly undermining Hannibal's campaign. This realignment ultimately isolated Carthage. Egypt survived as a client kingdom longer, but would eventually fall to Rome as well. Ironically, by the time Rome ruled both Egypt and the former Punic world, the old diplomatic currents were buried under Latin administration and imperial bureaucracy. Still, echoes of the ancient ties between Carthage and Egypt remained in trade routes, architectural patterns, and coinage design. In hindsight, Carthage and Egypt represent a case of parallel empires, distinct yet complementary powers that preferred trade to war and diplomacy to conquest. Their shared centuries of indirect alliance, commercial trust, and peaceful rivalry offer a rare glimpse into a different kind of ancient international relations, one not built on domination, but on coordination and mutual